Hey YouTube, my name is Dustin Atwood. I have been a professional technician for a couple of decades at this point and then some. Most of you on the channel probably know that because you tune into our podcast on a regular basis. I want to thank you a bunch for doing that. It is very windy today. I'm in a different truck, as you can probably see here. So hopefully the audio is not too bad, but we're going to give this a try. We're going to hang out for a little bit. And I'm going to bring you guys up to speed on some kind of current events with me personally, my family, and A1 Custom and Seaburg Service Center. So I have been working for A1 and Seaburg for better than 20 years. I've been an operations manager for probably better than 12 years at this point. I've managed a few of their stores. Some of you guys know me from that. And I've always wanted to be a shop owner, and so I'm going to share something with a lot of you that may not know that I wasn't the shop owner, but I haven't been the shop owner. I've been an employee forever, and I'm grateful for the experience. I've had three amazing owners that I've worked for over the years, and quite a few years ago, and I've never really hidden this from anybody, but I wanted to own my own shop. Now that vision has changed a little bit over the years. As kind of life does, it teaches you things, it changes your outlook on things. But I shared that with all of the owners. Everybody always knew that that was a goal of mine by the time I turned 40. And I'm fairly young there. Maybe you can see the highway patrolman sitting there on oncoming traffic side. Looks like he's happy with whatever I was doing. He didn't decide to pull in behind me, so thank you, sir. But I had shared that that was my goal, and that's really what I was working towards. I wanted to be the guy in this part of the country that when somebody needed it fixed correctly, or maybe they'd come up short in other areas, other facilities, you know, everybody said, hey, take it to Dustin. He can fix it, or he can figure it out. Now, what that vision kind of evolved to is I figured out that this business is a lot bigger than just Dustin Atwood. A1 Custom Car Care has probably between 35 and 40 employees, depending on when you see this video. And my goal, we have 5 locations right now. My goal is to push it to somewhere in the 8 to 10 range. And really, that's not a vanity thing for me. I couldn't care less. But I have seen, and we've interviewed, and we've hired a tremendous amount of people over the years that have worked at other companies that were not good experiences. And I hate that. I really do. The industry is hard enough without it being a terrible place to work. And I've worked at places that were not good places to work, unfortunately. And I can vividly remember back in the day when I was working under a manager that had a terrible substance abuse problem, that if I ever had any opportunity to influence the environment of a shop, or in this case a company, I would do a better job. Now, full disclosure, there's times that I come up short with that. And I work on that every single day. I'm absolutely not perfect, but the goal or the vision that, hey, we're going to be a good place to work, or a good place for your automotive problems, maintenance, solutions, that's who I want to be. And I want to be a part of a company that stands for that. And so, I don't know, probably about 10 years ago, it kind of looked like the opportunity would arise if I really put in the work and put in the effort, that potentially instead of me having to leave, I would be able to move into ownership with A1 and Seaburg. I'm really excited to share with you guys. It's very new, so I could face some headwinds. You never know what's going on in the world right now. But this last, January 1st, which is, about 10, 11, 12 days ago now, depending on whether you see this video or how quickly I get it uploaded, that actually came to fruition. So I'm really excited to have been able to invest all this time and effort kind of grooming this company to what I felt like the standard should be. And then I was able to move from the management position to the ownership position. Now, I will share a good lesson that I learned from one of my biggest mentors that I ever had. Is you think, when you look at a pyramid, you think as you go from the bottom to the top, as it gets smaller, you're climbing the corporate ladder, if you will. Well, the servant leadership philosophy kind of dovetails into that. Basically what that does is, yes, you climb and climb and climb, but at the end of it, you turn the pyramid upside down, and all of a sudden you're at the bottom and you serve everybody in the reverse direction, which would be your management, be your technicians, your service advisors, your customers, really end up being at the inverse or the top side or the bulk of that pyramid. And it's taken me years to finally grasp, and instead of that being somebody else's idea, now that's my idea. And it's that reps and sets or muscle memory that if I always remember that I'm serving the people that quote unquote work for me, they serve the people that I really need to take care of, which is all the customers out there. And I think that's probably one of the best things that I ever learned, and one of the things I guard the most as I continue to learn. I hope when I'm 50 and 60 and 70 and 80, God willing, that I never lose that understanding of the servant leader and the fact that you had better be learning every single day. And again, some of my best lessons have come from quote-unquote failures. And if you study any leadership practices or any very, very successful people, they're very quick to failure. And when I first started learning that or trying to be better at life, if you will, I didn't understand that. Like, I always thought you're supposed to avoid failure at all costs. That's the worst thing ever, is that you're a failure. What I realized is I'm not scared of failing. I'm scared of quitting. That's its own topic. We may get into that in this video. We'll see where it goes. But I somewhat enjoy failure. I embrace it. I lean into it. And that sometimes is a little weird for the technicians or service advisors or customers. I'm real quick to try whatever it is, and when I run into a hard stop, okay, that didn't work. I now have that information that, hey, that's not a viable option. And I think a lot of, especially today with the internet, AI, ChatGPT, and all that stuff, which is important in its own right. I'm not downplaying that in a negative. Do I think it's the end-all be-all? No. I don't know about you guys, but I've seen Terminator. I kind of have an idea of when they start thinking for themselves. But again, that's a video or a topic for another video. I don't mind when things don't work out. But I also don't want to not try it because I'm too scared of failure. So that's essentially where we are today. A1 and Seaberg Service Center are very established companies. They're very established brands. I am a product of those brands and companies because I was so young when I started with the company. That part of my employee file is gone because I quit at one point in time, and I'm sure they got rid of it at whatever, and then I came back less than a year later. So I'm not exactly sure when my original hire date was, but it was before I had children. I was a very young man. I want to say I was probably 18 or 19. If I remember right, when I became 21, I'd already worked here quite a while. And one of the reasons that I chose to come to work for A1 Custom, and really the reason I came back to A1 Custom, is I figured out that there was a little something different going on here with this company than any of the other companies that I had interviewed and had offers from, as well as the company that I left A1 and went to work for. At that point, I was so young that I felt like every company was the same. You know, they treat you good, they had benefits and whatnot. And the company that I went to work for was the exact opposite of that. As well as the reason that I accepted the position in the first place, and I've shared this story a few times on different podcasts, so if you've heard it before, I apologize, but I think it's worth telling again, is when I got out of my vocational school, I was doing light construction. I enjoyed it. It was a good work experience. I learned a lot there. But I wanted to get into the automotive field. This is who I wanted to be when I was a child, who I am now. And so things kind of changed with the construction company that I was working for. I made a bad decision, to be very honest. But in hindsight, the timing was right, and I needed a little bit of a boot in my back to push me into what I was wanting to be anyway, which is a mechanic. And so I went out and I interviewed and put applications in at one other independent in A1, a Firestone, and a Chrysler dealership that's no longer in Aurora. And I got offers at every location. And when I kind of dug in, the Chrysler dealership would have been a good fit for me. And really not because it's the dealership, but the lead tech there is still very successful. He's at a different dealership now. Amazing technician. He would have been a good mentor for me, and I guarantee I would have done very well under him and in the Chrysler organization. That would have been a good opportunity. The reason that didn't happen was the service manager was basically a used car salesman that had fallen in or grown or promoted into the service manager position. He spoke with a forked tongue. And literally he's like, "Yep, you're hired." And I came the day before I was going to bring my toolbox, and he said, "Hey, insurance won't insure you." I must have been 18 or under at that point in time. Must have been under 18. Well, I quit my job already, so that didn't work out for me. And so the day before I'm supposed to start there, I'm rocked back on my heels again. And it's like, oh, well, a phone call would have been nice. And I asked him that, and he's like, "Oh, you know, I got busy, blah, blah, blah." He didn't want to man up and say he had spoken before he could make whatever it is happen. Like, all right. So I was able to go back to a construction company. And then later some things happened, and I was out and interviewing. And that's when I talked to all of the other employees at the other 3 facilities. And I was real close to going to work for a Firestone. I think I probably would have done okay there. But their longest or veteran employee had been there 6 months. And he was a pretty good mechanic, but nobody else had been there longer than him. I'm like, well, that's weird. The general manager was doing the store manager's job, and that's what he was doing the interview. Nice guy. They had so much red tape to jump through. I had continued looking for work. And really, my old foreman at that construction company lived across the street from the manager at A1 Custom at Fort and Sunshine. So I already kind of had an in there. And he knew I was going to school to be a mechanic, and he told me when I got out of school to come see him. So naturally, I filed that away. And that's just scrap. There's some struts in the bed of the truck, so don't worry, the truck's not falling apart. But I did. I went and saw him. And I jumped through all the hoops with Firestone, and I never really felt like that was going to be the place, but I needed work, so I was out looking for work. In the midst of the time, I got to know some of the people at A1 Custom, and the newest employee, or the tenure of the newest hire, had been there 16 years. Now, this is a long time ago. This is early 2000s, so long time ago. I was like, hey, something's different with that place. And I was sitting in my 89 Mazda B2600i four-wheel drive pickup, and I remember getting the call and accepting the position with A1 Custom. And then pretty quick thereafter, Firestone called, and I had to tell them, hey, sorry, it took too long. I've already accepted a job somewhere else. Like, well, we'll give you another $1 or $2 an hour. And I was like, all right, I appreciate that. That means a lot to me. But I've already given A1 Custom my word that I would start with them. And I appreciate the extra couple bucks, because God knows I need it. But I've already made a commitment, and I'm not going to break it. I'm not going to call them back. And I wanted to see what they were about. They had an opportunity to teach custom exhaust, which there's no schools for that. I'm not saying you couldn't teach yourself that, but that would be a very long road to hoe. They were also going from A1 Custom Muffler and Brake to A1 Custom Car Care, which is a full-service automotive repair facility. We've been that for better than 10 years, maybe, probably 10 years. But even before that, we were doing full-service automotive, but our name was A1 Custom Muffler and Brake. So I got to learn the brake business. I got to learn the chassis business. I was here when we started developing our alignment equipment. So boy is going to try and take the whole road. I appreciate that, brother. I was here when they ordered their first bulk oil and started their maintenance program, and I have been here ever since. They have invested thousands of dollars in me for training at this point in time. I've been all over the Midwest. I've been out to Las Vegas, Dallas, Texas, Indianapolis, St. Louis, Kansas City countless times, Tulsa, and hundreds, if not thousands, of classes in Springfield, Missouri. So I am a product of their raising, if you will, of A1 Custom and the people that came before me. We've been in business for better than 40 years. I'd have to look up what Seaberg's been in business longer than that. Any of you in Springfield probably remember the Seabergs. They didn't go away. They became an A1 Custom at on Sunset. That Seaberg became our Sunset location with the staff and the equipment that was in it when we sold the location across from Bass Pro. We also had a location at the corner of Commercial and Grant, which I worked at for many years. That side of town just became a side of town that was too rough for us to keep a business open. So we moved south and we invested, and we're going to continue to do that. But along the way, it became somewhat of an opportunity that if I did what I needed to, instead of having to start from scratch, I would just get to shift gears. Struts again, I promise, it's fine. I was able to shift gears and have the opportunity to purchase the company, and that's what we have done. And so I share that with you here about 19 minutes into the video, that A1 is going to keep doing the same thing that it's always done, because thankfully I've been able to have the privilege and the opportunity to be a big part of that. And really the biggest reason that I didn't want to step out on my own wasn't that I was concerned that I would make it, and that probably sounds very arrogant, but I have no issue finding work. Sometimes I wish it was not so easy. It was all the people within the company of the 35 plus employees that we have, and families for that matter. I have sat down and interviewed and hired, or been part of the hiring process of all of those employees but two. And that would have been very hard for me to look to all those people that essentially, to take a word from my mentor, trusted me to hook their wagon to our train. It'd have been hard for me to look at them and say, hey, good luck. I wish you all the best. I have another opportunity, and I'm going to go do that without you. And some aspects, that would have been an easier start for me. And in some aspects, it would have been much more difficult. Leaving all these people that are a part of A1 Custom and that are A1 Custom and Seaburg Service Center, that would have been the hardest thing that I could have done. Because I felt like at that point I would not be there to take care of them when others might not, or I couldn't trust that to somebody else. And so that was really the driving force behind, even outside all the years and the investment and the time that I've got within this company, it was the people that I just didn't feel like that was the right thing to do. And I'm absolutely blessed to be able to move into purchasing a company with an amazing wealth of people that we have. And I know there's a lot of business owners out there, maybe some of you that view the channel or listen to the podcast. I'd love to understand your insight on this. People are the business. Whether it's customers, whether it's team, employee, whatever, they are what make that company. And I hear a lot of people talk about it being really hard right now to find top-tier talent or to grow top-tier talent. And they're right. But just this week alone, and it happens several times a week, if not a month, I have top-tier talent or people that want to be top-tier talent and want to put in the time and want to put in the work ethic that get a hold of me or are recommended to our company because of the reputation that we have. Some of our best people that I've interviewed, it's made it much easier to interview and hire people, especially in the Springfield market. We've got some work to do in the Arkansas market, that they want to come and be a part of what we got going on. And I say that very humbly. So Dave and I, and maybe I'll interview him one of these days. We'll see whether he'd be interested in doing that. He's our operations manager. He's somebody that I've known for over 20 years. He had no idea who I was until probably about maybe 3 to 5 years ago. But A1 and I kept putting in the work and the reps and sets to where we got a little bit of notoriety in this industry. And so when it was the opportunity for him to come on board, it was easy. He believed in us enough to take a chance, and I'm very thankful for that. Him and I sat down with a young man yesterday that was referred to me by my best friend, who is wanting to grow himself in the industry, and he thinks and believes that we can do that with him. And so it's a whole different ballgame, and I see Indeed all the time. I see all the other shops putting their Indeed profiles out there, and we have one as well. We're promising the world, and maybe they deliver on it, maybe they don't, but they're constantly chewing through people. And that's a bad business model, in my opinion. If I have to let somebody go, a couple of things went wrong. Either I didn't interview them correctly and I let somebody in that wasn't a good fit for us, not just on my end, but on theirs. Maybe we weren't up to par with what they needed. Or two, I didn't offer them enough support and training to make sure that they were a part of what it is that we do every day. And I'll be honest, I have failed at that at different times. I've worked much more intently on being better at those two things the last 10 years especially, but the last 5 years, to make sure that I don't ask somebody to hook their wagon to our train and then let them down. And again, I have let people down before. Those are lessons that I had to learn, and I continue to work at that every day. But it's very healthy for a company for people to be inquiring about coming to work or being a part of your company without having to dangle all these promises and lure them in. I'm very, very thankful and very proud to be a part of something like that. I can remember one of our absolute ace diagnostic techs, probably one of the best ones that I've ever worked with, and I've worked with many very good ones. I've been to training with many very good ones. He was excited to come and interview with us, and I take that as a huge compliment and very humbly. He's been with us many years at this point, and he is going to be evolving to help me along with others. Again, I'm not limiting what I'm doing to just me. This company is much bigger than me. He's better at diagnostics than I ever thought about, than I had ever hoped to be. And I say that with all sincerity and love, because I consider myself very good at figuring out what's wrong with a car. I'll be honest, I'm probably better at figuring out and interpreting what the customer is telling me that gives me the insight to figure out what's wrong with the car than I am at actually figuring out what's wrong with the car. If you do a good job at communication, you do a better job at listening. And I always refer to it as asking tactical questions. A lot of times that customer will tell you what's wrong with the car if you have a good automotive understanding. And so that's always been my superpower. Some of my techs, they don't need that. They don't rely on it. They don't use it as a crutch. Right, wrong, indifferent. Do we get the car fixed? Yes. They're able to jump in the middle of it and get to the bottom of it and take care of business. And their technical ability is what they lean on. I like to be the jack of all trades, master of a couple. But I love the fact that we have some diversity, we have some resources. You know, had I went out and just started my own shop, I would have had much less support and network, and I would not have been able to take care of as many people that A1 takes care of. Now, to roll this whole thing around as we come up on about 30 minutes, that's the reason that I want more stores. Is that sometimes I sit down and I interview or I get a phone call from somebody that I know would be a great fit to our culture. And sometimes I force it and I make it work. And other times if I do that, it's going to hurt some of the people within our company because we still all have to keep busy. And if I get it too heavily weighted somewhere, that's not good for us. So it's a little bit of walking a knife's edge. And so as I look at other businesses or companies, or I have other owners that call me, which happens from time to time, and say, hey, I've got a shop. I would really love for you to be the person or the company that takes it over and purchases it, because I have this amazing clientele, or I have these great technicians that I don't want to leave to just corporate America or some of these investment firms that are out there. So I share all this with you to make an announcement that nothing is going to change with A1 Custom other than we're going to keep growing, we're going to keep getting better, and we're going to keep serving the Springfield Republic and NWA, or Northwest Arkansas, just like we have for the last 40, 50 years. Pardon me. And any of you that made it this far in this podcast, you are the folks that I really get the most satisfaction out of sharing my experiences, some of my failures, some of my wins, and your insights in the comments and when I see you at the shops. I greatly appreciate that. So thank you very, very much. We're going to cut it off at 30 minutes. I look forward to seeing you guys and visiting with you in the comment section or in the shops. We'll catch you on the next one.